All right, what elephants learn? Passage one. Cynthia Moss has been studying elephants since 1972 when she started the now famous Amboseli Elephant Research Project in Amboseli National Park in Kenya. Okay, so the first underlined section is elephants since 1972. And there's a very prominent comma there. It's very conspicuous. And the question is, does that comma belong there? And should you actually put a comma between elephants and since? Now, no change would be that. Elephants, comma, since 1972 with another comma. Elephants since 1972, comma. Elephants possessive since 1972. Well, it's plural, it's not possessive, so we know D is wrong. Do we think that a comma should separate elephants from 1972? No, it shouldn't. There's no reason for a comma here. So that takes out B. It takes out B. We already eliminated D. It takes out no change because there's a comma there as well. So the only answer left is C. And C is the correct answer. So this should be very, very smooth flowing. Cynthia Moss has been studying elephants since 1972. Then you can put a comma there. When she started the famous Amboseli Elephant Research National Park in Kenya, period. An author, comma, lecturer, comma, filmmaker, comma, and a fierce advocate for elephants, dash, which face a daunting array of threats to their survival, comma, from droughts to human encroachment. Moss is widely considered an expert on the social behavior of these creatures. So we look at number two, the underline here. When she started the now famous, Amboseli Elephant Research Project. So what choices do we have? We can leave it as it is. We could change it to more than famous. More than. It's immediately wrong because it should be more than. If you wanted to say more than famous, meaning super famous, you wouldn't use then, you would use than. So G is wrong right away. H, now famously, this is an adverb, and it has to be either it has to modify an adjective or it has to modify a verb. And it's modifying project, research project. So it can't be an adverb, right? And again, an adverb. So the only right answer here is F, no change. The now famous Elephant Research Project in Amboseli National Park in Kenya. And we move on. An author, lecturer, filmmaker, and a fierce advocate for elephants, dash. Now you got to pay attention to the dash, which face a daunting array of threats to their survival from droughts to human encroachment. So the real question is, what are we going to do with three? Okay, we need symmetry, right? We got a dash here. So if we're going to have a clause that is separate from the main body, we gotta keep it symmetrical, don't we? So let's look at our choices. We could put no change where we've got a dash and no dash after it. We could do this one where it says encroachment, which would be dash. This whole clause would then have another dash after it. Okay. We could do a colon after encroachment, but a colon is only used when you're making a list or when you're restating something exactly pertaining specifically to encroachment. So a colon here is wrong, okay? And then a comma, you could put a comma here. The problem with the comma is it's not symmetric with a dash. So you've got a real issue here in terms of what you need to do with this, okay? So let's go back and look at it more closely. An author, lecturer, filmmaker, and a fierce advocate for elephants, which face a daunting array of threats to their survival, comma, from droughts to human encroachment. Moss is widely considered an expert on the social behavior of these creatures. So we know that this whole thing has to be dependent, right? So what we can do here is we can make symmetry between this comma and this comma. So which face a daunting earth threats to survival, comma, from droughts to human encroachment, comma. So the most correct of all of these choices would be D. Okay, because you do have to separate all of this out from Moss is widely considered an expert. Okay, this is a complete sentence. All of this is a dependent clause. Okay, and so you do need to separate it from the complete sentence. And the only thing that really does that in a reasonable way is a comma. Actually, you know what? I take it back. A dash. Let me see if there's a choice. Yeah. You can actually, you could make this subservient to the main sentence by putting a dash before the whole thing and a dash after the whole subservient clause. So I think at this point, you're separating with a comma in the middle, and then you've got the symmetrical dashes on either side of this dependent clause. So let's use that. I think that's correct. And that would be B, would be the answer there. Okay? So the point I want to make here is you're looking for symmetry. So you have to, if you have a dash before, you have a dash after. If you have a comma before, you have a comma after when you're separating out a clause. Okay, so let's move on to number 4. Right here. At this point, the writer is considering adding the following true statement. Humans are among the threats to the animal's survival. Okay, should the writer make this addition here, right here? Yes, because it presents a crucial factor in determining Moss's interest in working with elephants. Well, it doesn't say that in the passage, right? It doesn't say that she's interested in elephants because humans threaten them. So that's not a good reason. Yes, because it introduces the idea that becomes the focus of the rest of the essay. Well, it really doesn't. I mean, they go on to talk about lots of other things. No, because the essay is focused on elephants and does not otherwise mention a human presence in their lives. Well, I think that one is irrelevant. No, because this information is already provided in the paragraph. And it is already provided. Do you know why? Human encroachment. It already says that they are facing a daunting array of threats, one of which is human encroachment. So adding this sentence, humans are among threats, is just a repetition of what you've already said. So the right answer to 4 is no, because this information is already provided in the paragraph. So J is the correct answer. Okay, moving on to 5. A key finding from her intensive field studies is the extent to which elephant survival depends on learned behavior. All these commas, do they belong here? I mean, you're using a whole lot of commas there, right? And do you really need them? So intensive basically is an adjective, but you can consider this field study as a noun. What kind of study? Field study. So really it's an adjective and basically a noun, an adjective modifying a noun, intensive field studies. So you don't need a comma anywhere here. It's completely inappropriate to be separating these out by commas. So the right answer to 5 would be B, intensive field studies with no comma separating those words. Is the extent to which elephant survival depends on learned behavior. As Moss has observed, however, a calf must learn how to use its trunk. So is however the right modifier here? Because they just talked about learned behavior. And now they're saying a calf has to learn which is an example, right? It's not an exception. So we don't want the modifier, however, we want the modifier that basically says this is an example. For instance, is the perfect modifier there. So change that sentence to, as Moss has observed, comma, for instance, comma, a calf must learn how to use its trunk, period. And that basically is consistent with the prior thing that says that they depend on learned behavior for survival. At first, the young elephant will drink by kneeling down at the water's edge, and it's sipped directly with its mouth. Okay. So you've got kneeling and sipped. So now you've got verbs that are in totally different tenses. One is an ing verb, the other one's past tense. So they don't agree, right? Well, if you have parallel structure, they need to agree. So let's try sipping, since it's an ing form, just like kneeling. At first, a young elephant will drink by kneeling down at the water's edge and sipping directly with its mouth. That's the correct answer, C. When you're kneeling, you're sipping. When you kneel, you sip. When you kneeled, you sipped. These verbs have got to agree in tense, okay? That's why sipping is correct. All right, let's move on. The habit of pulling water into its trunk, then releasing that water into its mouth, develops only after months. Okay. The habit of pulling water into its trunk, period, is not a complete sentence. So you can't put a period here. Basically, you've got a subject and a prepositional phrase. So you need something more. Okay, and so right away, you know that no change is wrong here. So you first do an act, you pull it into your trunk, and then you release it into the mouth, okay? So let's consider this as a complete sentence and use the construction and then. The habit of pulling water into its trunk and then releasing that water into its mouth develops only after months. So that's the correct answer. So the right answer to A is G. It's an and then. First you do this and then you do that. First you pull the water in and then you release it into your mouth. Okay? So that is the correct answer, G, to this answer. Then releasing that water into develops only after months, as if witnessing other elephants doing so. Obviously, this phrase has to be part of the prior sentence, right? But what would make sense here? Certainly, as if witnessing is not correct, because it implies that it's not happening, or that it's as if, right? So that it's not like just narrative, okay? So it has to be basically something much simpler construction. After months, when witnessing? Okay, so months is over a long period of time, right? So when is not appropriate because it's usually a specific point in time. After months of witnessing, yeah. After months of witnessing other elephants doing so. So C is a good answer. Then witness, after months, then witness is completely poor construction. So the only correct answer here is months of witnessing other elephants do so. So basically, the habit of pulling water into its trunk and then releasing that water into its mouth develops only after months of witnessing other elephants do so. And you can, sometimes when you read it back to yourself, you know that it sounds correct. Okay, good. On occasion, Moss will see a calf stick its trunk into the mouth of its mother and pull out a bit of whatever plant material she is eating. In this way, the calf learns what kinds of vegetation are safe to eat on the savanna, where poisonous plants also grow. So the calf can't just experiment by trying different plants because it might eat a poison plant and kill itself. So it needs to see what the mother is eating and restrict itself to those plants. That's a learning process to keep the calf from dying of some alkali poison in the plant. Okay, elephants live in family groups, each one headed by a matriarch. The matriarch is the female head of the group. This senior female teaches adolescent females by modeling proper care of younger elephants, period. One of Moss's most memorable observations in which this regard, we'll just leave that even though it's wrong, involved 3 elephants. So one of Moss's most memorable observations talking about an older matriarch teaching an adolescent female how to care for a young elephant, okay? So we're saying, we're basically referring back to this. So one of Moss's most memorable observations in this regard, in other words, related to this idea of teaching. So the right structure here would be G. Most memorable observations in this regard involved 3 elephants, period. These were matriarch Echo and 2 offspring, now we're going to list them, Enid, a 10-year-old female, and Eli, you got to have an age here. Again, you have parallel structure. Enid, a 10-year-old female, so you got the name and the age, and Eli, a baby male. Right there. Because you've got to, this clause here has to relate to age if the structure is going to be maintained. So you could, you can't just say something else because the reader is expecting that you gave the age of the teenage female, now you're going to give the age of the baby male, a baby male. Okay, so the right answer there is B. Echo showed Enid, the mother showed the adolescent female, how to care for Eli, the baby, by staying close to him when he was feeding and sleeping, and by running to his aid when he signaled his distress. Eli not only overcame his early limitations, but he also grew up to be a confident young bull being a male. Okay, he not only overcame, but also grew. So those are both past tense, right? And they're in the same tense, which is good, right? We want the tenses to agree. So look at these tenses. He also will have grown. Okay, that's like almost a past participle type of thing. It's a different tense completely. He also had grown. Okay. You could use that. He had overcome his early limitations and also had grown. Okay, it's a past tense that's over with. But it doesn't fit here because they use the verb overcame, so you don't need the had grown construction. Also, growing in ing form doesn't fit. So this is all about verb tense. Eli not only overcame, he also grew. And the verbs have to match in their tense. So the right answer to 12 would be no change. All right, guys. Now, oh, wait a second. We got another question here. Question 13. Eli was born with deformed feet that initially prevented him from walking. For the sake of logic and cohesion, this is about what order you put things in. The best placement for sentence 7 would be where it is now at the end of the paragraph. No, because here you're saying how he overcame his limitations and he's now a confident young bull. You don't want to go back in time and say that he had deformed feet. That has to be presented before he overcomes it. You got to know what he overcame, right? So it has to be earlier than that. So it's clearly wrong in the current position. Before sentence 1. All right, so would you start out by talking about his disability before you even describe the whole process of teaching and the relationship between the matriarch, the teenager, and the baby? Would you start out with that? No, because it's not the main idea of the paragraph. So you're not going to start out talking about Eli's disability when you're really trying to describe the teaching process. Okay, so B is clearly wrong. Okay, now we move on to C after sentence 3. So let's look at sentence 3, see what we think. And here we go. One of Moss's most memorable observations in this regard involved 3 elephants. Well, the sentence is referring to 3 elephants. The next sentence should say who the elephants are. So you don't want to shove this disability statement in between those 2 sentences. So let's look at 4, because that's the last choice we have is after 4, I believe. Let me make sure. Yeah, after sentence 4. So here we go. These were the matriarch Echo, 2 offspring, Enid, a 10-year-old female, and Eli, a baby male. Okay. Now you're talking about a baby male. You're talking about Eli. So you finish the sentence with a baby male, and you can say Eli was born with deformed feet that initially prevented him from walking, because you finished the prior sentence discussing the baby male. So why don't you tell us what's going on with the baby male? So the right answer to where this sentence goes is after sentence 4. So 13, the right answer would be D. Okay. And 14. Moss has brought compelling stories and information about elephants. Now, of course, has brought and now is provided. See how these things don't agree in terms of verb tense. So let's see what choices. Moss has brought compelling stories and information about elephants is given by her to. No, that makes no sense. Moss has brought compelling stories and information about elephants is reaching. No. All right, let's look at just the simple word to. Moss has brought compelling stories and information about elephants to an ever-expanding audience. When you bring something, it has to be to something. So this structure makes perfect sense. She brought something to somebody. Okay? All the rest of this is totally out of context and completely unnecessary. And in terms of verb tense, it's wrong. All you need is a simple preposition to. So the right answer to 14 is J. Good job. All right, 15. Suppose the writer's goal had been to write a brief essay focusing on some aspect of animal behavior in the wild. Would this essay accomplish that goal? Well, I mean, it talked about the fact that elephants are in groups. They're led by matriarchs. The matriarchs are in charge of teaching. They teach the young adolescent females how to care for the babies. So there's a whole little narrative discussing animal behavior in the wild. So yeah, so would this essay accomplish that? Yes, it would. But now we have to decide, is it A or B? Yes, because the essay focuses on Moss's research on how elephants on the savannah learn to identify their various family members. Doesn't say anything about that, right? Never describes how they identify their family members. So we know right away A is wrong. But B is the only yes left, because the essay focuses on elephants on the savannah and some of the behaviors they display as studied by Moss. And that's clearly the correct answer, because that's really what the whole passage is about. So 15 is B, definitely. Okay, now we move on to our long passage, literary narrative. This passage is adapted from the novel A Map of Home by Rhonda Girard. Okay, so we'll go ahead and read through this. I don't remember how I came to know this story, and I don't know how I can possibly still remember it. On August 2nd, the day I was born, my Baba, father, stood at the nurse's station at St. Elizabeth's Medical Center in Boston with a pen between his fingers and filled out my birth certificate. He had raced down the stairs seconds after my birth, as soon as the doctor had assured him that I was all right. While filling out my certificate, Baba realized that he didn't know my sex for sure but that didn't matter. He'd always known I was a boy, had spoken to me as a boy while I was in Mama. And as he approached the box that contained the question, name of child, he wrote with a quivering hand and in his best English cursive, Nidal, which is an Indian name which means strife or struggle. Nidal. But it's a male name, right? Because the old man, the father, thought that his new baby was a boy. Aha. So let's see if he's right. It was not my grandfather's name, and Baba, whose name is Wahid, and who was known during his childhood as Saeed, was the only son of the family. So the onus, the responsibility of renaming his son after the grandfather, fell squarely upon his shoulders. It was an onus he brushed off his then solid shoulders unceremoniously, like a piece of lint or a flake of dandruff. These are analogies my grandfather would the next day angrily pen in a letter sent from Janine to Boston. So basically, tradition said that the narrator's father, Baba, should have named the grandchild after the grandfather, after his father. But he did not do that. He ignored the tradition. And not only did he ignore it, but he acted like it was no big deal, like a piece of lint, like you take a little piece of lint off your coat. It doesn't mean anything. Or you brush a flake of dandruff off your shoulder. It doesn't mean anything. So he dismissed this tradition without really caring that much about it, very casually. And that made the grandfather very angry. And he wrote a letter from India to Boston, basically he was angry at his son for ignoring the tradition. Okay. So that was a little family conflict there. But the story, of course, is all about the sex of the child. So the father, in his haste, ran downstairs and wrote Nidal, thinking that he had a son. When he'd filled out the entire form, Baba regally, like a king, related to the nurse, who he remembers was called Rhonda. Then Baba, in flip-flops, I guess he was wearing sandals, turned around and raced up the white-tiled hallway, bypassed the elevator, ran up the 3 floors to the maternity ward, and burst into the birthing room. So now he's back. How is my queen? Said Baba, caressing my mother's face. She's lovely, Mama said, thinking he meant me. And 8 whole pounds, the buffalo. So that's the trickster right there. That's the flip. So when he said, how's my queen? The father was referring to his wife. But the wife thought he was referring to the new baby, who was a girl and not a boy. So when the wife answered, she's lovely, 8 whole pounds, no wonder my back was hurting so much because she was such a big baby when she was inside me. Baba's brow furrowed. In other words, he got wrinkles. He was worried. And Mama couldn't finish her complaint because, eager to correct his mistake about giving the wrong sex to the baby, Baba was already out the door and running down the white-tiled hallway, past new mothers and their red-faced babies, past hideous robes in uncalled-for patterns, bypassing the elevator and sliding down the banister of the staircase. He raced on, screaming for Rhonda, the nurse. Where is Rhonda? Help me. Rhonda, an outcry that provided the staff with 3 weeks worth of laughter. So there's a famous song called Help Me, Rhonda. Help me, Rhonda. Help me, Rhonda. So that's why the staff was laughing, because he was screaming, help me, Rhonda. It sounded like the song. Okay, so he made a big mistake. He named his girl Nidal, which is a boy's name. And then he ignored his father's tradition and didn't name the kid after the grandfather. Rhonda emerged with the birth certificate in hand, and Baba, who is not usually known for laziness, grabbed a pen and added at the end of my name a heavy, reflexive, feminizing, possessive, cursive I. So Nidal became Nidali, Nidali, which is a girl's name. So now he's corrected it. Moments later, Mama, who had just been informed of my nom de guerre is a French expression that means my name of war, my name in times of war. And of course, the war was basically between the mother and the father about what the name should be. My nom de guerre got out of bed and walked us to the elevator, the entire time ignoring my Baba, who was screaming, Nidali is a beautiful name, so unique. Come on, Ruse, don't be so rash. You mustn't be walking. You need to rest. So basically, Mama was not happy with Nidali. She didn't like the name. Mama must not have fought long, or who knows, maybe she went to the nurse's station and talked to Rhonda, and maybe Rhonda told her that the birth certificate was already sent out, that Mama would have to go to the office of the City of Boston clerk and see the registrar of vital statistics where they keep the birth and death certificates. And maybe Mama, who is the most superstitious of all humans, even more than Baba, and to that she will attest, in other words, she'll agree herself that she's superstitious, shuddered at the thought of taking me, a newborn, through the heat and the Boston traffic to a place where she must have imagined people went to fill out death certificates. And she must have further imagined that going on such a trip to such a place would surely bring about my death because I still have my name. In other words, Mama never went downtown to the Boston city clerk. She never changed the baby's name. So when she says she still has her name, that means she's named Nidali. Whenever I imagined Baba running out just after my birth and sliding through the hallway like a movie star, I knew he must have embellished, exaggerated the story. Baba liked to do that, tell stories that were impossible, but true all at once. Kind of true, but exaggerated, especially if those stories made him look like a rock star. This is because he used to be a writer and was now an architect. Our little apartment was filled with blueprints and plastic models of houses instead of notebooks and poetry, a reality that filled him with great sadness. So Baba put that sadness into these stories. So basically, he wanted to be a writer, but I guess he couldn't make a living at it. So he became an architect. But his heart was still the heart of a writer, of a poet. So he would make up stories. But he was sad that he was not an actual writer. Mama liked to expose him when he told such stories. She was his paparazzo, his story cop. So if Mom heard a story that wasn't quite right, she would correct Dad. This was because she was the true rock star, a musician who no longer played music. Our house was filled with Baba's blueprints and plastic models of houses, and with my schoolwork and toys and dolls and 100 half pairs of socks instead of a piano. A reality that filled her with great sadness. So imagine a pianist with no piano. So a poet and a writer who had to be an architect, and a pianist that had no piano. So both parents were disappointed, sad about the loss of their desired career. I knew from the beginning that home meant embellishing, and that's why I loved school. Teachers were there, they taught us facts based on reality. So the idea is that, you hear a story at home, you're not quite sure what's true and what's not true. But at school, if the teacher tells you something, it's based on fact, so you know it's true. So she's making a contrast between home and school. Nidali is. Okay, so let's dig into the questions now on this cute little passage. The point of view from which the passage is told is best described as that of, well, it's clearly in the first person because she uses me, my, mine. It's basically told by her. And remember, she's a newborn when all this stuff is happening, right? In the beginning of the passage. So she's basically piecing things together from what she's heard about the day of her birth. But it's definitely told in the first person. Okay. So you can get rid of an omniscient third person, and you can get rid of a limited third person. So you know it has to be A or B. It's in the first person. I kept my name, right? She says, I kept my name. A first-person narrator who recreates a story about her parents and the birth of their first child, events which happened before the narrator was born. No, It happened right the day that she was born, right? She was part of the events. A first-person narrator who offers insight into characters' thoughts and relates actions mainly from a time she was too young to remember. Yes, she's telling a story about the day of her birth, but she actually obviously can't remember it. She's just piecing it together from what she's heard and what she knows about her parents. So the right answer to one, it's in the first person, is B. 2, the narrator mentions a piece of lint and a flake of dandruff, primarily for what reason? Basically to show how casually Baba discarded the tradition of naming after the grandfather. To imply that the narrator's grandfather didn't value family traditions? Not at all, he did. To provide examples of movements Baba made while filling out the birth certificate? No, he had nothing to, he didn't actually do those things. They were just basically figures of speech or analogies. Emphasize the importance of naming the baby after the baby's grandfather? No, actually, it's the opposite, right? Illustrate the casual way in which the narrator's father ignored the tradition, just flicked it off his shoulder like it didn't matter. So J is the correct answer to 2. 3, based on the passage, Mama's reaction to learning the name Baba gave the baby can best be described as she was not happy. Disapproval followed by resignation. Annoyance followed by amusement. Well, she's never amused by it. Embarrassment? No, she wasn't embarrassed. Shock followed by resentment? No. What happened was she disapproved, but then when she realized that she'd have to go down to Boston City headquarters and that, she'd have to deal with the city clerk, and she'd have to, go through all the traffic and the noise and the heat and be with all these other people in the building where there were people dying or signing death certificates. She realized it was just too much. She was never going to take her newborn there. So resignation is just kind of acceptance. So she disapproved of the name, but eventually she said, it's not worth it. We'll just keep the name. So the right answer to 3 is disapproval followed by resignation. Okay, she kind of accepted it, even though she wasn't happy. The sequence of actions described in the 7th paragraph, lines 54 through 68, can best be characterized as, well, let's go look at 54 through 68. Mama must not have fought long, or who knows? Maybe she went to the nurse's station, talked to Rhonda. Maybe Rhonda told her the birth certificate was already sent out, and the mom would have to go to the office of the city of Boston clerk and see the register where they keep the birth and death certificates. Maybe Mama, who's the most superstitious of all, shuddered at the thought of taking me, a newborn, through the heat. So she's kind of speculating, maybe this, maybe that. What is it that discouraged my mom from going down there and changing my name? Right? So it's a sequence of speculations. So let's see what the question is. So the sequence of actions described in the 7th paragraph can be characterized as Baba's exaggerated account of Mama's trip. No, this is the narrator speculating, saying maybe she did this, maybe she did that. It's not about Baba. A scenario the narrator imagines could have happened. Yeah, that definitely makes sense, right? Maybe this happened, maybe that. Okay. The story of how Nidali got her name from Mama's point of view. No, it's not. It's not told from Mama's point of view. Remember who's talking. It's Nidali who's talking. And a memory that the narrator shares to reveal more about her personality. None of that is about her personality. It's all about what her mom might or might not have done that day or thought about that day. Okay. So the right answer to number 4 is G, a scenario the narrator imagines could have happened, maybe. The narrator concludes that Mama didn't go to the office of the city of Boston clerk based on the fact that A, Baba believed it would be unlucky to change a baby's name. Doesn't say that. So don't add things that aren't there. Going there would have required taking the baby out in a severe winter storm. It doesn't say that. And again, don't add things that aren't in the paragraph. C, Mama had a tendency to change her mind quickly. It doesn't say that. The narrator still has the name Nidali, right? At the end of that paragraph, the narrator concludes that Mama did not go to the clerk in Boston because She still has Nidali, right? Because I still have my name, Nidali. That's how she knows her mama didn't go. Okay, so the right answer to 5 is D. All right, let's move on to 6. In line 78, the phrase, these stories most nearly refers to, let's see what line 78 is so we can get it in context. Our little apartment was filled with blueprints and plastic models of houses instead of notebooks and poetry, a reality that filled him, her father, with great sadness. So Baba put that sadness into these stories, these embellished tales that were partially true but greatly exaggerated. Those are the stories that Baba tells. They're kind of embellished. So let's see what choices. These stories refers to the conflicting stories about the origin of Nidali's name. No, there's no conflict there. Baba's notebooks and poetry. No. The embellished tales Baba liked to tell. Yes. He was a frustrated poet, a frustrated writer. So he would try to be creative when he would tell stories. And he wouldn't just give you the facts. He would give you a little bit of artistry with the facts. So H is definitely a good answer. And then J, the narrator's accounts of her family's time in Boston. No, it really doesn't talk at all about Boston as a setting, just in terms of the reversing the name on the certificate. Okay, so the right answer to 6 is H. 7, according to the passage, which of the following emotions do Baba and Mama share regarding their professional lives? Well, remember, they're both disappointed because, Baba wanted to be a writer and he wound up being an architect to make money. And Mama was a musician who played the piano, and she's busy being a mom, and there's no piano in the house. So they're both sad. So pride, anxiety, sadness, contentment. So the right answer there is clearly sadness. Okay. 8, of the following characters, which one does the narrator describe as the most superstitious? Remember, Mama was very superstitious, even more so than Baba. And Mama would attest to that. In other words, even Mama agreed that she was more superstitious. So who is more superstitious? Well, it's right there, Mama. And it's right in the text. She talks about being superstitious. Superstitious of all. Mama was the most superstitious of all, even more than the father. And she'll agree to that. So there you go. It's right there in the text. You don't need to guess. Okay, number 9. The narrator most strongly suggests that Mama does which of the following when Baba tells stories? Remember, she's the cop. She's the person that corrects the stories when he goes too far. She's his story cop. So she kind of corrects things. So let's see what she does. A, she yawns and rolls her eyes in boredom. B, goes about her business and ignores. C, chimes in with exaggerations of her own. D, corrects him about the accuracy of his details. She corrects him. She's his story cop, right? And I think it says that that she is a story cop. Let's see here. Mama liked to expose him when he told these stories. She was his story cop. In other words, keeping him straight so he wouldn't just exaggerate too much. Okay, 10. In the passage, the narrator makes which of the following distinctions? Remember what she said. At home, I get embellishments, exaggerations, part true, part fantasy. But at school, I get facts and reality. So let's see which one of these says that. Home is a place of embellished stories, whereas school is a place of facts and reality. There it is. F is good. Mom is a true rock star, whereas Baba is an amateur musician. No, he's not. He's an architect. Being an architect made Baba happy. It did not. Writing requires great imagination, whereas playing music requires great skill. Well, no such contrast is made in the passage. So the only contrast is between home and school. Home is a place of embellishment, school is a place of facts. So the right answer to 10 is F. And that concludes this section. And now we're going to stop sharing and hopefully we can call up our words. And you guys can't see that, right? Uh-oh. I always get into trouble here. I'm gonna have to close out of it. Gosh darn it. Okay, well let me pull it up again and I can, you guys have the list, right? I'll just pull it up again and then we'll share it. There we go. So we got I think about 10 words, and then I have a couple words that I've selected for etymology. All right, here we are. There we go. Share screen. There we go. All right, here we go. So just look to the left. So our first word is encroachment. So who knows what encroachment is? Anybody? So to encroach on something is to intrude on it, to intrude on a person's space, on a person's territory, on a person's rights. It would almost be like trespassing on something. You know, the sheriff was encroaching on the citizen's rights when he demanded that the citizen get out of his car for no reason. He was stepping on the guy's toes, encroaching on him. Not a good thing. Okay, matriarch. Who knows what a matriarch is?
The female leader of a family.
A woman head of a family or a tribe, yeah. Like the elephants had a matriarchal system where basically the herd would kind of follow the senior female of the group. Okay, onus. The onus is on you. What is an onus? Okay, an onus, it refers to something that is your duty or your responsibility. So for example, if you're the last to leave the building, the onus is on you to lock the doors. The responsibility is on you. Okay, that's really what it means. If you make a mess in the kitchen, the onus is on you to clean it up. It's your responsibility. Okay. Dandruff. What is dandruff? We know what dandruff is. Anyone know what dandruff is?
The white stuff in your hair.
Yeah, it's a little white stuff that's in your hair, and then it flakes down onto your clothing. And sometimes you'll see people, if you're behind them, you'll see they have all these white flakes on their shoulders and their upper back, and that's a sign that they have dandruff. And what it is the scalp is flaking. Little pieces of scalp skin are coming off, dead skin, and they're falling down from the hair onto the clothing. That's what dandruff is, and you can see it in the hair, and you can see it in the clothing. And there's special shampoos you can use to reduce dandruff. But it's not a pretty thing. People don't want to have it, obviously. Okay, regally. What is it to do something regally?
Majestically.
Yeah, as if you're a king. Because, you know, regna basically in Latin means king. So you're majestic, you're a monarch, you're magnificent, you're the highest of the high. You're regal, you're full of dignity. She walked into the room with a regal air, as if she were the Queen of England. Okay. You think you're better than everyone. Anyway, okay, furrow. What is a furrow? Anyone? It's a couple of things to refer to a furrow. First of all, a furrow can be made by a plow in a field. When a plow goes along the field, it digs a trench, a linear trench that you put seeds into, and it gets covered up. And that's still you planting in furrows, in lines. A furrow can also be the lines that appear on your face when you're upset. Like when you wrinkle up your brow because something's bothering you, it forms little furrows in your forehead, okay, on your face. So that it can refer to the ground or it can refer to lines or wrinkles on your face. Okay. Attest. What is it when you attest to something?
You agree?
Yeah, you basically declare that something is true, something is valid. I attest to that. I agree with it. I can state that it's true. I attest to it. Okay. And that's going to be one of our words. We'll talk about that. Embellish. Okay, we know what embellish means because Baba was always embellishing his stories. So what does it mean to embellish something?
Decorate?
Yeah, so you can embellish the Christmas atmosphere in the ballroom by hanging lights. So you can decorate, you can adorn, you can add features and make it beautiful. You embellish the room, but you can also embellish stories and statements by adding things that may not actually be true, but might make the story more interesting. So you can embellish the appearance of a room or a Christmas tree, but you can also embellish a story. Slightly different meaning there. Okay, ebullient. What does it mean to be ebullient?
Excited?
Yeah, like you're just full energy. You're boiling over. You're cheerful and full of energy and happiness and joy and excitement. So it's like a real extreme kind of joy. So maybe the children were ebullient when they found out they could go swimming in the lake. So happy. Okay, egregious. And we've done this word before. Egregious, outside the flock. So what is it when something is egregious? It's outstandingly bad. It's shocking. It's appalling. It's worse than it's the worst thing you could imagine someone could do. He committed an egregious crime when he chopped off the heads of the three young girls. I mean, it's just outside the pall of civilized behavior. Okay. His behavior at the party after he got drunk was egregious, as he wound up tripping over the carpet and spilling all of the food onto the floor. Egregious behavior. Okay, good. So the two words that we're going to do, the first word is attest. Now, attest, right here, A-T-T-E-S-T, can be broken down into a and test. Now, the a comes from the Latin ad, A-D. See, the D became a T, which can happen sometimes, but it means to, near, at, or towards something or to something. And testare in Latin means to be a witness, to bear witness. And so toward being a witness, attesting to something, saying that it's true, acting as a witness to something. Okay. Now the testare, which is in Latin, you find in words like testament. Testament. The witness of the will and testament of somebody who has passed away. Okay, the testament serves as evidence of what this person wanted to do with their belongings, with their legacy. And so you always hear this expression, the last will and testament. In other words, bearing witness to what this person wanted done with their estate, with their legacy. Okay. Another word is testimony. You know, when somebody goes to court and they get sworn in as a witness, they sit up in the witness box and the lawyers ask them questions, and the response to the questions is their testimony. Okay. And so again, it comes from testare, to bear witness. So think of those words: testament, testimony, and attest. And always think of testari, T-E-S-T-A-R-I, meaning to bear witness or to be like a witness to something, proving it, stating it to be so. Okay? So that's a test. The next word we're going to do is embellish, which is a great word. Now, again, this is from the Latin, and cut it here. This is the prefix M, and this is the root, okay, embellish. M is a variation of N, which means into or in, okay? Into or in or toward, N, right? And bellish comes from bella, B-E-L-L-A, which means beautiful. So toward making something more attractive, embellishing it, beautifying it, like beautifying a story, beautifying a room, beautifying a Christmas tree, embellishing it. So what other words can you think of that use the root bell or bella? Can you think of?
Belladonna,
Yeah, wow, that's awesome. Tell me about belladonna. What is that about?
a flower.
It's a deadly nightshade. It's actually poison. So let me explain this to you. So Doña basically means woman. Belladonna means beautiful woman. So there in pharmacology, there's a group of plants called nightshade, and they have a chemical inside of them, which is basically it's atropine. Atropine is a poison, but women would take this atropine in drops, and they would put the drops in their eyes. They would put a drop of this poison, essentially from the plant, one drop in each eye. And the reason they did it is because the atropine would make their pupils dilate. And when their pupils dilated, they looked more beautiful. So the plant itself got the group of plants that had this poison, this atropine in it, became known as the belladonna alkaloids, belladonna poisons, because they made the women beautiful. Okay? And it's kind of a weird thing from history. I don't think women do this anymore. Apparently, having big pupils made you more attractive. So that's where we get the term belladonna alkaloids or belladonna plants. The other one is the belle of the ball. Oh, she was the belle of the ball. She was the most beautiful woman in the room as she danced with her handsome partner. Cinderella was the belle of the ball. Okay? That's another expression where they use belle. The other one is la belle époque. Who can tell me what la belle époque is? It's a French expression. Basically, it's a period of time in France between the Franco-Prussian War and World War One, between the 1870s and 1914. During that 40-year span, there was peace, no war, there was economic prosperity, and there was a flourishing of arts like music and painting, and also of science. So they called it the beautiful period, when there was no war and so much human accomplishment. And just to give you some names of artists that were active during that time: Picasso, Renoir, Matisse, Gauguin, Toulouse-Lautrec, Monet. This was the Impressionist, post-Impressionist period, where there's so many incredible artists that were productive, came out of France at that time. So La Belle Époque is the beautiful era, or the beautiful time period. Okay, guys. Well, that is all we have time for, and I hope you guys got something out of that, and we'll meet again next week. Any questions from me?
No.
Okay, guys. God bless. Have a good week. Learn something at school.
Thank you so much.